What happens when love turns into envy? When the person you once prayed for becomes the one you secretly wish would fall. In a quiet African village, beneath the swaying mango trees and the red earth, two sisters shared everything, until success built a wall between them. One rose. The other watched. And in the silence between them, something dark began to grow. She smiled at her sister's wedding, but her heart burned. She clapped at her sister's progress, but her soul whispered curses. Until one day, love died, and something else took its place. This isn't just a story about family. It's a story about comparison, pain, and the dangerous power of unresolved envy. About how jealousy, once planted, can destroy more than it was ever meant to. Before forgiveness came, before tears and truth. There was Adanna. And there was Chioma. Two sisters. One heart slowly turning to stone. But before we begin, tell me, where in the world are you watching from? Is it morning in Lagos, evening in Nairobi, or midnight in London? Drop your location in the comments below, hit like, and subscribe to Stories by the King, where every story carries a heartbeat, and every lesson leaves a mark. Now, lean in. Because this story isn't just about jealousy. It's about what happens when darkness wears the face of love. The village of Umuofia breathed a slow, gentle rhythm, dictated by the planting seasons and the daily walk to the river. It was here, in a small hut shielded by the massive canopy of a mango tree, that Adanna and Chioma were raised by their hardworking mother, Neka. Chioma, the younger by 2 years, had a spirit as clear as the stream water. She excelled in school, her mind sharp, and her disposition kind, always ready to share the single orange they could afford. Adanna, however, saw the world through a glass clouded by a strange, quiet resentment. She was the one who worked harder on the farm, whose hands were tougher, yet every success seemed to drift to her sister like wind to a sail. When a foreign scholarship came, it had Chioma's name on it, not Adanna's, confirming a narrative Adanna had already written for herself. She was destined for struggle, while Chioma was marked for glory. This internal wound, subtle at first, festered into a deep, painful core of jealousy that she masked with silence and a forced smile. She never celebrated Chioma's success, only studied it, cataloguing every new item of clothing, every glowing letter from the city, every sign that their paths were separating irrevocably, with Chioma soaring and Adanna rooted firmly in the red earth. The true fracture came the year Chioma returned from the city, not just with a degree, but with Obinna, a man whose family owned half the commercial buildings in Lagos. Their wedding was the talk of Umuofia for months, a spectacle of silk, music, and wealth that made Adanna's own humble marriage to a local farmer feel like a footnote in a forgotten history book. At the reception, while Chioma beamed in a gown that shimmered like liquid gold, she pulled Adanna aside, holding out a sealed envelope. "Sister," Chioma whispered, her eyes earnest, "Obinna and I want to send your son to the best boarding school. You've worked so hard, let us help you lift this burden." The simple, kind offer landed like a slap. Adanna felt the burning heat of shame and fury. Her own failure as a mother, as a wife, as a woman, was being openly acknowledged and pitted with an act of charity. She forced a smile and politely refused, a lie about wanting to keep her son close to the village tumbling easily from her lips. Inside, a seed of darkness took root. It was not enough for her to succeed, her sister had to stop being so utterly, perfectly, successful. The desire for a different life mutated into a silent, desperate need to stop the progress that made her feel small. The years that followed only widened the chasm. Chioma's success multiplied. She started a non-profit, built a beautiful house in the city, and still made the time to send back trucks of provisions to their aging mother. Adanna watched the admiration in their mother's eyes, the proud, unreserved love, and it was a knife twisting in her gut. She was consumed by a toxic cocktail of pride and envy. One humid evening, a traveling fortune teller, a woman known for her cryptic insights, stopped in the market. Adanna, driven by a despair she could no longer control, sought her out under the cloak of twilight. The woman, eyes clouded and voice raspy, did not speak of love or money, but only of shadows and a price. She held Adanna's hand, her touch cold, and whispered, "There is a gift you have, one that can take what is not yours, but when you steal another's sunshine, you must wear their rain." Adanna left the encounter with a racing heart, dismissed the cryptic warning as nonsense, but the idea, the power to take, lodged in her mind like a splinter. Her resentment was now a full-blown plan, one that she began to weave with cold, terrifying precision. The perfect life of Chioma had become Adanna's single, burning target, and she knew exactly where to strike to make the collapse feel the most devastating. The plan Adanna concocted was cloaked in the simple, unquestionable virtue of familial duty. Chioma's new home in the capital, a structure of glass and white stone surrounded by a sprawling garden, was a fortress of untouchable success. Adanna knew she could not attack it from the outside. So, she called her sister, her voice thick with fake concern, explaining that their mother, Neka, was growing too frail to manage her life alone in the village. "You are busy with your great life, sister," Adanna said, the words dripping with passive aggression, "and my husband's farm needs me. But the gatehouse to your palace, it is small, clean, and safe. Let Papa move in there. He can watch your property, and we can all share the burden of his old age." Their father, who had been a respected elder and a storyteller in Umuofia, had indeed suffered a minor stroke, his energy fading. Chioma, whose heart was too big for suspicion, immediately agreed, seeing it as a perfect solution. Her father would be close, cared for, and treated like a respected member of her household. But Adanna's intention was a venomous whisper, to make the proud, successful Chioma's life a living, slow-motion portrait of disgrace. The arrangement began subtly, like a slow-moving, fatal poison. Adanna's father, Papa Izenwa, a man of immense pride, was reduced to the role of gateman by the city security detail, a symbol of poverty packed at the entrance of immense wealth. This was Adanna's first masterstroke. She ensured that Papa Izenwa, who loved his privacy, felt the constant, nagging weight of his diminished status. Every week, Adanna would call him, not out of care, but to subtly amplify his complaints. She'd ask, "Does your daughter give you the nice tea, Papa? Or is it only the servant's brand?" She knew Chioma was showering him with everything, but the seeds of doubt and complaint took root. Soon, Papa Izenwa began to genuinely feel neglected, his cultural pride wounded by the perception that he was a charity case. He began to lash out, subtly undermining Chioma's authority in her own home, whispering tales to her husband's family that Chioma was a big city woman who had forgotten the customs. The beautiful, sparkling life Chioma had built began to feel the constant, heavy tremor of familial conflict, driven by a man she only wanted to protect. The test reached its emotional peak during Chioma's annual charity gala, a lavish affair meant to raise funds for village schools. Adanna, having meticulously planned the confrontation, traveled to the city under the guise of delivering traditional medicines to their father. She watched from the shadows of the gatehouse as the shining cars pulled up and the city's elite, smelling of expensive oils and silk, entered the illuminated house. Papa Izenwa, miserable and confused, sat alone on the small stool by the gate. Adanna approached him, tears she had perfectly rehearsed welling in her eyes. "Papa," she cried, a voice loud enough for the guards to hear, "how can my sister do this? The whole city sees you, a great elder, sitting here like a watchman while she dances inside. She is too proud for us." The elderly man, whose mind was now a fragile tapestry of confusion, was instantly set alight by indignation. He burst through the gates, crashing into the brightly lit foyer just as Chioma was delivering her speech. The sight of her frail father, disheveled and weeping, shouting accusations of neglect and shame, brought the entire event to a screeching halt. Chioma rushed to him, her face a mask of profound devastation. The flash of 1,000 camera phones went off. In that moment, Adanna, watching from the darkness, felt a powerful, triumphant rush. She had done it, she had finally cracked the perfect mirror of her sister's life. But as she turned to leave, she noticed the deep, heartbreaking confusion and betrayal in her father's eyes, and a sharp, unexpected twist of guilt, icy cold, pierced the heat of her triumph. The fallout from the gala was swift and brutal, but not in the way Adanna had intended. The next morning, a profound silence hung over Chioma's house. The initial shock had passed, replaced by a quiet, devastating clarity. Chioma, her eyes red from a sleepless night, did not call her sister to accuse or fight. Instead, she walked down to the gatehouse where Papa Izenwa was sitting, still sullen and confused. She did not argue or defend herself. She simply sat at his feet, laying her head gently on his knees. "Papa," she whispered, her voice raw, "I have failed you. Not by neglect, but by my pride. I thought I knew what was best, to bring you to my big house and make you safe. I forgot that a man is not safe when he is stripped of his dignity." She then confessed her true fault, believing her wealth could solve everything, that she could control her father's happiness. This moment of deep, unreserved humility was a greater shock to Adanna, who had been listening from the shadows, than any scream of anger could have been. Chioma was not broken, she was simply, profoundly human. The true reckoning for Adanna came hours later, not through confrontation, but through a discovery that shattered her self-righteous narrative. As she prepared to leave, a guilt-ridden shadow, she overheard Chioma talking softly to her husband, Obinna. "It was never my money Adanna hated," Chioma said, her voice heavy with sorrow. "It was the fact that I got the scholarship that year, the one we both wanted, because Papa gave the elders a note telling them my name was a mistake and to give it to her instead. He said Adanna deserved the chance more, that I would find my own way. But when the elders read it, they saw it as a test of my merit, and they tore it up and kept my name." The story hung in the air, Papa Izenwa's ultimate sacrifice, his profound belief in Adanna's potential, a secret act of love that had backfired, leaving a trail of bitterness. Adanna staggered back, a gasp trapped in her throat. Her envy had been built on a foundation of a lie she told herself, fueled by a progress she believed was unearned, when in fact, the one person she had the most, her own father, had tried to move mountains for her. The hatred for her sister's progress was actually a hatred for her own self-pity and blindness. Adanna walked into the house, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm of shame and terror, and found Chioma packing a small bag for their father. Adanna did not scream, did not cry. She simply knelt, placing her trembling hands on the cool, polished floor. "Sister," she choked out, her voice barely a whisper, "I put the poison in his ear. I hated you. I wanted this perfect life to crumble because I believed you stole my chance." Chioma turned, not with fury, but with the boundless, weary love of a woman who had already understood everything. She helped Adanna stand. "The progress was never the problem, sister," Chioma said, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "The problem was the seed of darkness you planted in the garden of your own heart." Chioma did not shame her, she forgave her in silence, in the gentle pressure of her hand. She then announced her decision. Papa Izenwa would be moving back to the village, not to his old home, but to a small, newly built house right next to Adanna's farm, where she could watch him and he could tell his stories among the elders again. Chioma would finance his care, but Adanna would provide the dignity he had lost. Adanna accepted the task, a lifetime of penance and love. The sisters looked at each other, not as rivals, but as two women finally sharing the burden of their humanity. The envy was gone, replaced by a quiet, profound peace. The wind rustled the leaves of the great mango tree outside, a slow, gentle song of two hearts finally beating in harmony, two paths converging on the same road of humility and unconditional love. The greatest gift is not the one you are given, but the one you are finally able to accept. If this story gave you chills, hit like, drop a comment, and subscribe for more. A new story drops soon, and trust me, you won't want to miss it. This is Stories by the King, where every ending sparks a new beginning.